Hello, welcome. My name is Nicholas Hall. I'm the founder of Graham's Foundation. Today, May 7th, 2023, Parents of Preemies Day. And I'm going to have an opportunity to chat here in a minute with Kristy Love. I'm really looking forward to that. But before we do that, I just want to do just a quick overview of Graham's Foundation. Founded in memory of my son 13 years ago. Our vision is a world where no parent goes through the experience of prematurity alone, and our mission is to inform and guide parents of preemies so that they may confidently navigate the journey of prematurity. We have various support programs to support folks. We have a complimentary preemie parent care package that parents can request, family friends can request, neonatal intensive care unit staff members can request as well. Ship those directly to the parent's home. We have our mentor program, nearly 40 parents with different experiences and backgrounds, all fully trained and, of course, former preemie parents, but once a preemie parent, always a preemie parent. And we have the My Preemie mobile app, helps parents journal their experience. It has a lot of the common terms that you're going to bump up against possibly while you're in the neonatal intensive care unit with your baby. And it not only has a nice explanation of the term, but also recommended questions to ask. Again, all about informing and empowering you as a parent of a preemie. So thanks for that. And with that, want to introduce you to Kristy Love. Kristy is the executive director of the National Perinatal Association. She's also a preemie parent, and among other things, she spent, I think, over 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. I'll let her correct me on that, but at the bedside as a parent mentor in her local neonatal intensive care unit in St. Louis, and she's also a board member at Graham's Foundation. So if we could bring and welcome Kristy. Hello, Kristy. Good to see you.
Hello, Nicholas. Thank you so
Yes.
much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So share with us, if you could, with the audience, a little bit about National Perinatal Association, kind of when it was founded, what kind of makes up the membership, and what the goals and objectives are of the, we'll call it MPA, because it's a little bit of a mouthful for those, and
Yes,
that'll roll off our tongue a little bit easier going forward. But you can share with our audience a little bit about the history and background.
absolutely. So, the National Perinatal Association was actually founded in 1977. It was co founded by Dr. Stan Graven and Sister Jean Maurer, who was a midwife. And the organization is a multidisciplinary organization, and it just shows the importance of that everyone has a voice at the table.
And
So, my
so, oh, sorry,
involvement,
go
okay.
ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, go right ahead.
I was just trying to understand when you say multidisciplinary. So, are the members like? Give me an example of like the titles, the types of people that
Mhm.
are members,
Absolutely.
and certainly in particular how they, the work they do. How does that impact parents that have babies in the neonatal intensive care unit, born prematurely and otherwise?
So our membership actually begins pre-birth. So we have
Okay.
MFMs, OBs, neonatologists, midwives, doulas, and then of course we have our nurses, our social workers, our psychologists, parents, lactation consultants. So when we say it's a multidisciplinary, it
Yeah.
truly is. Everyone has a voice at the table. Anything that we work on, any initiatives, we just always make sure that it's well rounded and we're hearing a voice from everyone.
Yeah. So with your association in particular, so you've got this broad range of membership. What's the what's sort of the lightning rods that has the individuals that are members? Like, what is it that draws them? You're just coming back from you just had your annual conference, right, last week. So
We did.
maybe like, what are some of the keynotes or topics or subjects? I'm trying to help the audience kind of understand what are the types of issues that your members are trying to take on and trying to bring forward.
So Health equities is the big one, and obviously that and rare diseases was our theme topic for this year. It is so interesting to me every year when we're at the conference to see who are our attendees, who is attending virtually, they're person, as well
Yeah.
as we have a list of students that also participate.
Hmm.
Um, but when our closing is always so empowering, and just
Mm,
kind of we touch base on what we just heard, and now what? How are we going
mm,
to take what we learned at our conference and take it back to our institutions and implement these ideas? And to listen to some of our members um, during our closing was, I'm not going to quote her name because I don't have permission to, but she said, I found my tribe.
mm,
To find that interdisciplinary organization where we don't make change without including everyone who it involves.
mm. Yeah, and that's important, and I know it's not easy either. It really requires a commitment to the process. Kristy, how long have you been involved in with MPA?
So I attended my first NPA conference 20 years ago this year.
And what
I
had you
attend
what had you attend? Do you recall?
So I was attending as a parent. As you stated, I worked at the bedside at a level 3 NICU as a parent advocate. And so my parent organization was nominated for an award through
Mm,
the National Perinatal Association. So I attended my first professional conference ever. And it was extremely intimidating because
wow.
I was a parent, and I
Yeah,
had all these different disciplines coming up to me and wanting to know my
right,
story, wanting to know
right.
what brought me here and why I'm doing the work I'm doing. But they are also the ones that sat behind me and help empower
Mm,
me.
yeah,
And, that my voice does matter, and
yeah.
I need to
Mm.
continue to do what I'm doing. So
Well,
after
obviously, it was quite an impact, and while you may have been intimidated, it wasn't too much for you to
right.
get over because now you're running the show day to day. How long you been in the role as executive director?
So I actually sat on the board for 2 years, almost a full term, and then I became um, employed by NPA in 2014. So I'm sorry, back up. 2009. I've been with them for 14 years.
Wow, that's fantastic. And
Yes.
what have you seen in the 14 years? I mean, that's you were there, I guess, a year before I founded Graham's Foundation. So I know what the journey that we've been on at Graham's. How about the journey at MPA? What are some of the changes that you've seen? And perhaps some of the challenges as well.
So I would say with changes, it's always anytime we have a board driven organization, you're going to have changes as new board members come on. And as someone who doesn't never thought she liked change, I have learned to adapt to it. Our board members are typically on for 1 to 2 terms. Each term is 3 years. They come in with new ideas, new implementations, such as the discharge planning guidelines, and transition to home is our most recent ones that we have worked on. But really taking brainstorming on how we can do better. How can we take an initiative and
Mm,
implement them into an institution? So, for instance, NICU to home, as you all can see on the screen, we took guidelines, created guidelines to help the transition from the NICU to home to be a more seamless process. As a
mm,
NICU mom, and many others will probably share, is like it's scary going home. We feel like
yeah,
we're prepared, we're ready to go, but then once we go home, we kind of start backpedaling because our
yeah,
support system is the NICU staff and we no
right.
longer have them. So sharing and allowing people to know that look for your community resources. So
Mm,
not that did we only create the guidelines, now we are taking a pilot hospital and we are implementing them in an institution along with a community organization that's helping that transition to be as seamless as possible.
that's fantastic. Can we? I'd love to with the NICU to home as an example. Can we back up and I'm interested, sort of, you remember what maybe the spark was that led to the idea, that led to, you're kind of talking about different board members. Maybe it was a particular board member that really kind of grabbed the torch, if you will. And so just kind of interested in sort of, when it started, and how long the journey has been. That would be, I
Absolutely.
think parents would find that interesting.
So it actually started with me.
Ah,
I
your
know,
call.
right? So
Careful what you wish
as I
for.
shared, so for 18 years, I
Mm.
had the privilege of working at the bedside with families, and I was getting phone calls from our families who had been discharged anywhere
Mm.
from a year, 3 years, 5 years,
Mm.
and just sharing with me what their process has been like. And the whole point that I got into being a family advocate is because I wanted families to have something I didn't. And
Mm.
so I think I'm doing a great job, and there's still a missing link. And they are sharing their stories with me. And it hurt my heart a little bit to think 16 years later, and families are still leaving the NICU feeling the way I felt at the time. And so I was at an NPA board meeting. I hosted it in St. Louis and had a side conversation with Dr. Vincent Smith, who is a neonatologist from Boston. And he said, Kristy, let's do something about it.
Mm.
And I said, who, you and me? And he's like, yes, let's pull in our friends. And so it was 3 years. We did take a little pause through the pandemic, but we picked right back up, and through sponsorship from a couple of our industry partners, we have been able to collaborate and create these beautiful guidelines.
Now, how were the guidelines developed? Because I've spent some time on the NICU2home.org for those of you at home. We'll definitely include the link as well. But I spent some time. I mean, it is, and I'm pretty sure Graham's Foundation. We had some folks from Graham's that were involved in some of the development of the underlying materials. I mean, it is, some really significant, really great detail, great resources. So just kind of curious of the process, how long it took, and sort of what that was like, and just the development of these guidelines.
So again, like I shared before, anything that NPA does, we make sure that there's all voices at the table. And so we pulled together a pretty lengthy list of about 40 representatives from different organizations in other cities and states, and just really across the world, and sent them an invite, told them what we were wanting to accomplish if they were available to commit. And I believe we ended up with 32 different representatives from different organizations, as well as different disciplines, from social work to occupational therapist, physical therapist. We had a couple, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, physicians, participations, and parents. So we originally had our first summit, and then really that's when the work started. We broke out into what was important, what pieces.
I recall like a series of calls, and
Yes,
that continued to, you broke it up into probably those
exactly.
color boxes are sort of representing perhaps maybe different different disciplines within the transition home, different areas of focus, right? Because it's quite complex. And so, and then when did you, I guess, publish? When did they sort of, okay, we've no more editing, no more we're going to digital print, as they say. When was that completed?
March of 2022. So just last year.
Okay.
And so when we put together guidelines and publish them, we always make sure that they're open access, because we never wanted to cause any barriers for getting these in people's hands. So they're always open access, so they're available to everyone. Our partner, Angel Eye, they are sponsoring the implementation, and really they're taking and they're creating their own education module. They're adding a discharge module to their education as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. So that's obviously that's one example of how helping to kind of get the word out, as you will. What are other ideally what would it look like in terms of adoption, right? How do you envision NICU2home.org? How do you envision it being adopted, being leveraged?
Well, really taking it back to your institution and getting a team on the ground to review them and then identify where are the barriers in your NICU with transitioning families and preparing them to go home and feeling comfortable and confident. I was fortunate. I was able to be at the NICU every single day, a minimum of 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So here I was a mom who had a lot of family support. I was involved in all our son's cares. He was going home on equipment, medication.
Yep.
I felt 100% confident. But
Mhm.
when it came for me to walk out that door, I was scared.
Yeah.
Even though I had all the education, hands-on training, but where was my community on the other side?
Yep. And so the idea then, if I understand, is so the NICU2home has guidelines, and ideally a neonatal intensive care unit would probably create a type of a multidisciplinary task force, hopefully, right within their
Correct.
NICU,
Yes.
and they would divide and conquer, and they would review the guidelines and ask themselves, where are we relative to this particular guideline? If they identify gaps, then is there any? Is that kind of the idea?
It is. It is. And you always, when you're doing it in the moment, because I was part of that medical team and had
Right.
those conversations, preparing families for discharge, and you think you have all the boxes checked, but going back to the family and asking them, where are they through the
Yeah.
discharge?
Yep.
We assume we've checked all the boxes. Everyone has signed off on everything. Babies, eating, growing, doing great. But how do the parents really feel? Do
Mm.
they feel confident? And I think that's a piece that we often forget is we as a medical team, we feel that they're prepared, but are they
Right.
really prepared? On the
Yeah.
outside, I looked 100% prepared for them to send us on our way. But in the inside, I was scared to death.
Yeah, and you're not. I mean, that's much more. I think we all know that's more common, right? That's more
Mhm.
typically the situation. Are there any particular? I guess I'm just trying to. I'm trying to imagine. Are there any particular um, champions? Like, how do you develop a? Maybe this is still. I mean, you said it just got published March 2022, so it's relatively new. But are you finding that there are any particular like individuals that are kind of taking up as maybe a champion within their NICU? Do you kind of need someone to sort of introduce the
Yes.
idea and then really, because I would think that this would be this is not a quick, this would not be a quick process to really take the time to go through this and thoroughly examine your particular NICU, and then also it's one thing to observe, it's a whole other thing to take the work necessary, the effort necessary to actually implement the change required to meet the guidelines.
It is. It's a process, and we currently have one of our steering committee members who took it to their hospital as we were looking for a pilot hospital. And so Banner in Tucson, Arizona is piloting it. So she took, and that's a whole nother presentation, Nick, of her implementation process of going and identifying the need and taking it to her stakeholders. And she did share, like, the first 10 minutes in her meeting, immediately they said, absolutely, we need to do this.
Oh, wow.
And so, yes.
Well, now I want to, next time, I was just in Tucson for a month. I should have, I was at the National Association of Neonatal Therapists conference, and it'd be great next time I'm out there. I'd love to visit and see firsthand how their experience with this. I think so. Is there any opportunity, Kristy, with parents? Is there any value that parents could benefit from the NICU2home website? And if so, how might parents benefit from it?
Absolutely. So anytime that a family is getting ready to go home. And I'm going to say it's not just the parents that are on the outside of the NICU, but also on the inside, right? We have Google now and everyone does research and looks for,
Yeah.
and you can even, and it shouldn't be this way, but you can bring them to your NICU that your child's in and reflect on them to help your process.
Mm,
Again, it shouldn't always fall in our hands, but that sometimes
yeah.
we have to share the information that we're reading.
Right. And say, these are guidelines that I understand, and perhaps asking the NICU staff what, given my situation with my
Mhm.
baby, with what our transition home is going to look like. Perhaps there's some areas of the transition home that they could help the family kind of focus
Yes,
on or lean in, understanding that, as I understand it, it's a framework,
right.
right? And so, but your particular situation as a parent may not, it may not all apply to you, to your particular situation. But
Mhm.
I think just introducing the idea and the concept, there's going to be probably some beneficial conversation that you as a parent would end up having with the staff.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. When you have to start there because to, you know, like again, it goes back to identifying where's the missing link.
Yeah.
And so to be able to move forward for sure, we are getting ready to have a 2-step webinar. One is Dr. Vincent Smith talking about the guidelines themselves, me talking about the parent
Mm,
perspective of why the guidelines are important,
yeah.
and then um, Kyler and Jennifer from Tucson will present on the implementation of how she
Oh,
implemented them in the unit, and then Jennifer's from Smooth Way Home, and she's going to talk about the community resource and how they partner together to make that
oh,
transition.
oh, that's fantastic. That's great. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us
Thank you for
today.
having me.
Are there any, is there anything that I missed? I know we could go on about this for a long time, but, and I just
Right.
really appreciate you kind of, helping to illuminate us on MPA and on the important work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Yes, as we move forward, our 2024 focus is going to be on trauma informed. And so we will, anything that we do, such as the guidelines, there's always that mental health piece. And so we will
Yeah.
continue to pull that into the work that we're doing.
No, that's great. It's incredibly important. We're looking at that here at Graham's Foundation as we're going to be we're having starting to have chats with parents, and I think it's one of those topics that we all we acknowledge that it's an issue, it's a challenge. We have a tendency to kind of put our head in the sand. We're going to fight through this and get through it, and we put on a good face. And unless staff are really, unless they're really kind of doing probing questions, you
Mhm.
might have a hard time really recognizing those of us that are being severely or really being impacted by our experience in the neonatal
Absolutely.
intensive care unit. So it's fantastic the work that you're continuing to do, and being a champion for all of us preemie parents. Kristy, thanks again for
Thank
your
you, Nick.
time today.
I appreciate Nicholas. Thank you.
You bet. Well, thanks again, Kristy, and thank you to our sponsor, Dr. Brown's. Support for preemie parents every step of the way. Have a wonderful Parents of Preemies Day, everybody.